request. Good morning, learned fraternity, students and staff members of Idea College for Women, Sirugani, and the Syed Amal Arts and Science College, Kutampudi. I'm happy to be part of this one-day webinar on research methodology, fundamentals to facets. Let me thank the principal of both the institution, Reverend Sister Dr. Jyoti Mary, Idea College for Women, and Dr. Amanullah Sir, Principal of Syed Amal Arts and Science College, for taking such a wonderful initiative in organizing this webinar. I must thank personally Mrs. Vishalakshi, head of the Department of English, Idea College, who constantly kept in touch with me regarding all the technical things and the procedures and the other things that has to be followed in order to, for the past 2 weeks. And my sincere apologies to all the academicians, the student staff, those who present online, to those who present here right now to hear my talk, to wake you up very early this Sunday to hear this talk. But I'm very happy that such a lot of crowd is here to enhance their knowledge on research in such a sleepy Sundays. That's all right. That's a great spirit that we have towards our profession, and that shows the passion you have towards our profession. And since the audience of this session is from various disciplines, I have planned in a way where I could share the ideas about research methodology and practices that can be taken by any individual or by the department or as an institution. And I assure you that this session would bring research consciousness, and it will help you to know the attributes and fundamentals of research. Let me share my PPT. Can you all see my screen? Anyone from the host? Okay, thank you. So here we have come to the important section, that is today's session. Fine. Research methodology, fundamentals to facets. Academic research, any kind of research, that can be an academic research or else an industrial research. There must be validity in it. There must be some procedures to be followed. And we need to know what is the reality where we live, what is the bitter reality that is happening around us. And my first slide is for you people to show what it really is. See, you can see the newses. Just rack your brains with the newses that I have made a collage. The first news says that rupees 3 lakhs can get you a doctorate without research. And the other news says, it is all the news that I have took from online journals. And other news says that India has fewer researchers than China, US. And yet another news says, when will India build world-class research universities? And one more news says, de-link research and teaching. How come you can link research? You could read these articles in Times of India online, where let's say where a reporter says de-link research and teaching, so that research and teaching cannot go hand in hand. That's very pathetic. Fine. And one more news, why higher education is devoid of quality. There's no quality in higher education, or else the higher education research. And one at the end, one positive note and one positive news in this collage is government is taking steps to expand research institutions and research activities. And one news says that Indian research quality lags quantity. So this is where we live. This is how the research is in right now. Apart from a few institutions, many of us are lagging in research, which has become a need of the hour. And here is a research and development expenditure. You can see this when you close examine this, you can identify where India stands when we compare with the United States, China, Germany, Japan. These are the bubbles. The bubbles on the bigger size shows that the expenditure used for research and development by different countries, and you can find India at one corner. It shows that we are still lagging behind, and it is our responsibility to improve this situation. Okay, when I think of what is the reason for such a situation or such a bitter reality, then there sparks a certain ideas to my mind, and they are there in the next slide. What are the reasons for such grim reality? Reason number one is lack of proper research methodology. That's what I consider as a reason number one. And then reason number two is higher order thinking skills. And then reason number three is research writing skills, lack of research writing skills. And then reason number four is lack of research practice at undergraduate and postgraduate level. And then the next is lack of integration among classroom teaching practice and research. I think this may sound just opposite to one of the news where we have seen de-link research and teaching practice, but that's not the way to attain quality in research. And then lack of research universities to supervise the process of documentation, and lack of institutional initiatives to enhance research. So these are the reasons that I believe for such a lag in research and development. Okay, let me redefine or explain in clear about, or else let me give a little bit solutions to these problems. So first one is the salient features of research. Whatever the academic research or industrial research, it is international. So it has validity everywhere only when you follow proper methodology. So there are different types of research which differs from discipline to discipline. So according to the purpose, you have theoretical research, exploratory research, applied research, descriptive, and then you have something called as quantitative and qualitative, but that depends upon the data that is collected. And there is one more, there are other types of research called as experimental, non-experimental, quasi-experimental, but those research depends upon the degree of manipulation of variables. And when we talk in general, science major students or the science major researchers would undertake experimental research. Arts major would opt for survey-based research, and students of literature may choose textual research, textual-based research, and language teachers, history major teachers, economics major teachers, or the researchers may choose a field-oriented research. So these are the types of the research. So before you start your research, you must be very sure what type of research am I going to opt. That is the first concern. The next thing is that what is the connection between research and methodology? See, there are two things when I should talk about methodology. One is what we do, and the other one is how we do. What we do may go wrong, but how we do should not go wrong, should be perfect. This how we do is the methodology as far as I'm concerned. So methodology is how we do the research. When the way of approach to a particular problem is right, then the whole research will end up perfectly. For example, when I was discussing about this with one of my professors, he gave me a simple analogy to explain the methodology. That is, see, imagine if a woman undergoes a cesarean operation, or else a man take it up any kind of a heart surgery or anything as any kind of an operation. There are certain procedures that has to be followed when you do that, and there must be some preparatory ideas that you should have: the temperature maintained in the operation theater, the sterilization of the instruments that you use for operation, the procedures that you have to carry out, and those things. Likewise, in research, you have procedures. The procedures that you take up is very important, and that is known as methodology. So this methodology differs from discipline to discipline, and I'm not going to deal with it right now. So the first thing that concerns you is undertake this research. Why should I have to do this? Why do I undertake this research? What is the purpose of my research? See, the research writings are not for keeping them safe in the shelves or else in your files. It is for the public. See, it is something that should benefit the society and the students and the teaching learning process. See, industrial research are done for money, but academic research are done for expansion of knowledge. So you should identify where the problem lies. In order to identify the problems, or else, what is the purpose of my research is to rectify this problem. Okay, fine. Then the problems are the background of any research. For example, we face many problems in everyday classroom. When you plan to find a solution for them, you will be analyzing it. You will be studying whole thing, what is happening, or what has happened in your classroom, and that becomes the background of the study. So, but before you step into background of a study, you should get, before you step into a research, you should get a complete picture of it. And that is what is called as a background of the study. All the insights of the problems are generated in our classroom. And most of the academic research deals with the problem that we face in our classroom, or else in a library, or else in a laboratory, or else in a teaching learning process. So we must be very clear about the background of the study which we are going to undertake. After you understand what is the background of the study, the next concern that you should have is aims and objectives of the research. So when you are comprehensible in your aim and objective, that would channelize your research process. Aim and objective are the most important thing that you should focus, that you should make it clear before you go and look into the review of literature. Okay, what is the aim of your research? No, I don't have any aim. Then that's not a research at all. You should have aim. Only then there will be a purpose of your research. It is not for just for the sake of article, just for the sake of book, just for the sake of journals, or just for the sake of presenting in a conference. There must be some aim behind your research. Research is a cyclic process and it has no end. Before you move on to the frame, that is research questions, you should know earlier what are all the earlier researches that were conducted in the same field. And in order to know that, you should be enlightened with the earlier researches. So that section is called as review of literature. This can happen only when a researcher published the research. So therefore, doing a research is as important as sharing it, publishing it, presenting it in a conference or a seminars like this. So only after you understand what has happened in the earlier research, you will be able to find how far your research differ from the others, where is the exact loophole, because there is no use of spinning the same wheels, right? There is no use when you do the same research that was done by somebody else or 3 or 5 years back. So your research must be innovative. There must be some sort of new perspective in your research. So in order to attain this, you must have a sound idea or a knowledge on the earlier research. So this review of literature will help you to identify those things. The next feature is a research question. See, we generate the research question at the beginning of the research, and based on which we move forward. If your research question, imagine if your research question is a signpost, that which signpost that you find when you travel from one place to another, how many kilometers. For example, if you are traveling from Chennai, you will find the signpost then and there, when will you reach Madurai. Or else when you are traveling from Madurai to Ramnad, you will be seeing the signpost that will help you to travel safe and in a right path. Likewise, the research question or research questions are the signpost which will help you to move forward. And if research questions are the signpost, then the hypothesis is the goalpost where you are going to reach. See, hypothesis is nothing but the assumption. A simple example that I can give you is the vaccination which we are doing right now. We faced a problem, like every research there is a background of a study. Likewise, we faced a problem, then we did the background of the study where it has emerged, and from there we have identified that the problem is somewhere with the virus that which entered, and later on we assumed that we can find medicine for or to prevent human being from this virus. So likewise, hypothesis, it is also a type of a hypothesis when you consider it as a research article. When somebody writes a research article based on the vaccination, then definitely they would have written finding out the vaccination with so and so combination, then that would become the hypothesis. So hypothesis is nothing but assumption. Whenever you find out an aim or objective, and when you know where your research lies after your review of literature, it is your responsibility to frame at least 10 questions in the area of the research where you wish to research. And after you write down the 10 questions, scrutinize it into a 5 topmost questions where you can club 2-3 ideas into a 5 questions, and choose at least 3 research questions. With those 3 research questions as a premise, frame your own hypothesis. See, hypothesis, as I have already said, it's nothing but assumptions that you have before you start your research. So these are the features that every researcher of any discipline should have it in concern. So when you are well versed in these features of the research, definitely I'm damn sure that your research will be a top-notch one, and it will be worth to share it with your colleagues and the academic community. So when the features of the research is right, and when the researcher do justice to what he does, then the sole aim of the research will be achieved. So this is one kind of a problem that I wish to address. The next thing, so before I move on to the next thing, I wish to confirm with the host whether am I audible and my screen is visible. Anyone from the host can confirm this.
Yes, ma'am. Your voice is audible, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So the next section which I wish to handle is higher order thinking skills. See, we to be very frank, we are not used to such a kind of higher order thinking skills, which we call it as HOTS. Our students are very much lagging in it. Most of our curriculum and teaching trained students to repeat or replicate existing knowledge. See, imagine you are taking a class. We are teaching in our classroom, and we are asking to learn what we teach in our classroom, and we are asking our students to write what we teach. So that is mere replication. So we are not. So we are asking them to produce what we teach in their examination, or else in the form of the assessment what we do. So this kind of teaching learning practice cannot promote a research attitude in a student. If you really wish to promote a research attitude, then you should promote, or else you should instigate the students higher order thinking skills, because only those skills will help the students to critically analyze the problem. Mere reading of novel and writing essays on it, writing its summary, writing its story in the paper is no way going to help them to solve the problem or else identify the areas of the problem where they learn. So in order to rectify those areas, higher order thinking skills are much needed. So our curriculum should be embedded with the higher order thinking skills. That's the first concern. And we always feel that critical thinking skills, higher order thinking skills are like an add-on that should be added to our curriculum. It is not like that. It is an integral part. It must be an integral part. It must be an integral part of our teaching learning process. Because, and the next thing which I wish to say is, students should be encouraged to ask questions in the classroom. Some may wonder what the speaker is addressing about critical thinking skills, question skills, higher order thinking skills. In what way it is related to research? Yes, of course, it is related to research. When a student just hears what we say and nods our head, then definitely he or she is not going to think what our teacher says is right or wrong, whether it can be implemented or whether it can be followed in my real life or real time usage. So every student should get those insights, those critical thinking, whether this thing said by a particular person is right or wrong. Do we have any flaws? Do we can assure that any student of any category can identify the flaws in a research article? No, we cannot, because we haven't given practice to them. And one more thing, the reality is, teachers, we ourselves, we need trainings to apply this higher order thinking skills in our teaching. Because what we learned, we teach now to them. We were also not taught in that way. Then teachers should be given professional development training to apply higher order thinking skills in their teaching. And the institution or else the university or any organization that wish to promote research should provide adequate resources and technical infrastructures to provide that is related to higher order thinking skills. And before that, proper policy and guidelines should be framed to conduct research, to incorporate higher order thinking in our teaching learning process from the Ministry Ministry of Education concern. So in a way, higher order thinking skills, critical thinking skills are no way can be avoided when we talk about research. So when higher order thinking skills are incorporated or embedded in our curriculum, then definitely there is a chance of promoting research activities in our department as well as in our institution. The next thing which I wish to focus is research writing. Actually, I have a question for you all. I planned to do this in an online source called as Mentimeter. Even you can do it now. I don't know whether the response will be reflected. You can type www.menti.com and use the code 92581015. My question to you all, or else if you feel very hard, no problem, you can reply it in the chat box. My question to you all is it reasonable to ask the final year postgraduate students to do research project? I repeat, is it reasonable to ask the final year postgraduate students to do research projects? I just switch my screen so that I can look into your response in the chat box, and I'll bring it back once again. Is it reasonable to ask second year postgraduate students to do research? Okay, I find many answer as yes. No, some say no. Okay. So many find it reasonable. We can give research projects to MA students, MA final year students of any discipline for that matter. It is necessary. Wonderful. It is necessary because critical thinking skills are essential. Ajit Kumar. Yes, Ajit Kumar. It is reasonable to ask postgraduate students. Okay, good. Because they will attain more information when they go for research. Tamayandi. Good, Tamayandi. Fine. Okay. I don't find any negative answers. Most of you people support it is reasonable to give to ask the postgraduate students to do research projects in the final year. Roshma Siju says it will help them to go further with their research. Yes, wonderful. And Jairani says it's reasonable because they'll have an idea how research has to be done when they go for PhD. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Okay, fine. Thank you for all your response. Thank you. What I really felt is, yes, it is reasonable, but on one condition. See, actually, it is not reasonable when you didn't teach them how to do a research article or research writing. What I felt is, research writing is something different from exam writing, creative writing. Exam writing, completely, they write what they learn in the classroom, which is totally different from research writing. See, we haven't trained our students for research writing. Then how come all of a sudden at the end of a post-graduation, we could ask our students to write research projects? Some may have courses. Some institutions may have courses for especially exclusively for research writing. Those institutions, yes, of course you can. But a few institutions or a few departments, straight away they are asking second year, final year postgraduate students to write the research projects. But that's not reasonable. That's what I felt. Because exam writing, we have trained our students only to write what we have shared with them. And none of our assessment process supports research writing. Then it is our responsibility to enlighten them about the difference between research writing and exam writing. So research writing should be explained in first hand. Only then we can ask our students to write research projects at the end of the final year of master studies. And so exams and assignments should involve research practices. If we involve such research practices, that would help them when they come to the MA final year, or like you said, when they go for PhD, when they opt for PhD. Right now there is no MPhil. Hereafter there is no MPhil, and if they may go for some research projects, fellowship programs, we should train them on the first hand how to write research papers, research articles, research thesis or dissertation. So all of a sudden we cannot create magic. At least in a minimal level, we should bring that in our classroom teaching and learning process. And the next problem, most of us as a teachers, as a faculty, we have faced, that is, we always observe students copying the content from internet sources. But we have the habit of accusing them, please don't copy. We have the habit of telling them, don't copy from internet. But what's wrong in it when it is done with the complete or proper documentation? So better not accuse the students of copying. Rather, as a teachers, let us teach them to use open access informations in their assignments, but we must train them to document the source from where the student has taken the information. Because research cannot be divided, or research goes hand in hand with documentation. So we should teach them how to document the sources. if he or she takes a resource from an open access information like internet, Wikipedia, or any other site for a sake, we should tell them how they must mention the source from where they have taken. We cannot all of a sudden teach different patterns like MLA, APA, Chicago. Rather, wherever he takes the source, we can ask the students to add a small hint at the end, saying source, and make them write in it from where they have taken. It can be .com or .org, or else the name of the blog. If they are doing a digital assignments, then ask them to copy paste the link from where they have taken the resource. So these are the one way we can promote research writing to these students. And then the next essential technique is paraphrasing. The reason for most of our students to copy paste the information given in internet is because of inadequate knowledge in paraphrasing. So it is our responsibility to teach them how to paraphrase, which would support their research writing. Because most of us, we do paraphrasing when we write the section called review of literature, when we write section called background of study. It is all the techniques of writing. It is nothing wrong in teaching or educating them properly, and making them feel free that they are doing something that is a mistake, but it is our sole responsibility to channelize them for a betterment and teach them how to paraphrase, which would support their research writing. And next, we should enlighten them on readers' perspective, because none of the articles are going are for vain. Okay, all the articles will be read by someone, or at least by the peer, or at least by our colleagues, or by friends, or by somebody else from some country. So there must be one concern for the research writer, which is called as reader's perspective. How will my reader understand what I write? In order to give my informations properly, then I should maintain coherence and cohesion when I write my research article. So we should teach them the techniques of coherence and cohesion. And we do have the responsibility to warn them, or to insist them to avoid colloquial language, informal language when they write research articles. And then now the gender inclusiveness becomes it's spreading widely. So we should train our learners to use gender inclusive language, and we should help them in providing different sentence structures. Even we can give undergraduate students, first year undergraduate students, what are all the different structures of sentences used in research articles, or else ask them to identify the reported speech in research articles, so that this kind of this little steps towards research writing, research practices can bring a bigger change when they become a researcher in future. So these are the nuances or the techniques that which we should teach our students or insist our students. And these are the areas as a researcher you must be careful with when you are writing a research article or a paper. Okay. The next concern for us is research practice that can be carried at undergraduate and postgraduate level. What is this? How come it is possible? We don't have enough time to complete our syllabus. How come then the change should take place from the curriculum and syllabus itself? Okay, that's a wider perspective. Before moving into that, let me tell you, two skills are much needed. One is reading skill and the other one is critical thinking skills. Why can't we insist our students, or why can't we help our students to develop these two skills, that is particularly reading skills and critical thinking skills? Before I move into that, I wish it was the word which I got when I discussed with one of my professor friend. Too much of reading and no critical thinking will lead to producing existing knowledge, which is very true. And too much of critical thinking and no reading will lead to reinvent the wheel. That is, we will be revolving around same thing. So reading is as important as critical thinking, because academic research, or any research for that matter, focuses on new ideas, perspectives, and arguments. So the research process is not simply collecting data, evidence, or facts, fixing it in the paper where we present, or fix all the pre-existing ideas in all the informations in a paper. Rather, research process is asking about questions, developing answers through critical thinking and thoughtful reflection. So in order to do this, students' reading habit should be encouraged. Yes, ma'am, many discussers, ma'am, we are asking the students to read, but they are not reading it. Why? Because certain things has to be forced unconsciously. See, when our testing and assessment completely forces reading and critical thinking, then there will definitely be a change in the reading practice and the way people think. Because reading is as important as critical thinking, we know the bitter reality. Most of us are poor readers. But there is one way to flip the situation, that is only through testing and assessment. For example, ask your student to read a research article and reflect on it. Only then you will give assignment marks for them. Then he or she will definitely do it. Right, on that occasion, that may seems to be something forceful to him, but he will cherish the fruit of it when he becomes a researcher, when he becomes an expertise in the field of the study. If testing does not force reading, then what else can do that? So as far as I'm concerned, we should promote a reading habit and critical thinking at undergraduate level. Once I have attended one of a seminar or a webinar where a professor said, when, for example, we teach a novel, or imagine we teach a drama written by Shakespeare, and our questions, that which we ask in our examination, should be out of box. How? Should make the learner to read two more novels, two more dramas written by Shakespeare. One, if he or she has read, only then he can attempt that particular question. So these are simpler ways that through which you can create magics. Yes, you can promote reading habits unknowingly, not annoyingly, unknowingly within the students. So we can promote reading habit and critical thinking at undergraduate level, and testing and assessment should force reading and critical thinking. I'm sorry for using the word force, but then you force now, later it becomes their habit, and they'll feel happy for teachers forcing us those days when we study undergraduation. Fine. And assignments can be exploited to promote research culture. For example, students can be encouraged to read journal articles, book chapters, some grant reports. This would help them as a real-time example. Even it can be given to first-year UG students to understand the research culture. Okay, how a research article is. This is enough. An insight, a small spark, a tiny spark created within the minds of an undergraduate student of first year, can be done through or making them to read research articles. That is enough. That is a small step that we can do. And we should, we can introduce course to foster advanced interpretations, critical reading, academic scholarship, research writing at postgraduate level, so that the students get a lot of knowledge in it and they will carry out the research. Earlier, we had course called MPhil where we learned research methodology. Right now, we are learning it not by not like we learned in MPhil classes, even though that becomes one of the requirements in PhD. So it is our responsibility to do it. As one of the ELT expert, English language teaching expert, Stephen Krashen points out, less is more. Less is more. So comprehensible unit, that is we as a teacher, as a department, we should frame at undergraduate first year, what are all the things that a student is going to learn as a part of research? What are all the things the students are going to learn as a part of the research in the second year? How are we going to groom students as a good researcher when it comes to final year of post-graduation? That proper planning will help us to do it, and students can be encouraged towards research at minimal level in every year. And before that, we must be trained in order to execute this in our classroom. Okay, so these are the research practice at undergraduate and postgraduate level. These research practices can definitely promote research. Next, one big question that linger around our mind is, can we can integrate classroom teaching practice and research? I say yes, you can do it, because integrating classroom teaching, testing with research can only help to promote research among the faculty as well as students of any department or any institution. So first thing which I wish to say in this, integrate up-to-date research data in the curriculum. That is, research-based elements of curriculum can be developed by a department. By what you can do is, in a simpler way, you can include emerging outcomes in that particular subject. If English is concerned, English research like language research, literature research, just a piece of research article can be included in the curriculum, so that students will get knowledge about how a research article will be, how a topic should be, how an abstract should be. Just one piece is enough to create an insight within them. And engage students with reading list. Okay, before going into that, a curriculum can include professor's research article itself, professor of that particular department, the research articles written by professors of that particular department or experts in that current research can be included. And it can also be shared in the lectures. Okay, what if the curriculum is very constrained or restricted to certain boundaries? I cannot include these things in my curriculum. Okay, fine, include it in your lecture. No one is going to ask you when you finish off your syllabus. We know there are so much of free hours where we can share many things. Share a research article with the students, enlighten them about how a research article is, what are all the credits a researcher faces in his life, what are all the promotions that he or she gets, what are all the recognitions that he or she gets as a researcher. So those activities can encourage our students. Fine. And then as a teacher, we may create our own research blog. I don't know how many of us have our own research blogs. So we can create research blogs. We can encourage our students to follow our research blogs, or else we do have social sharing networks like academia.edu and ResearchGate, Scopus IDs, and other things, Figshare, which you will see later on in this session. You can ask, you can encourage your students to follow you, so that they'll be reading the articles which you write, and they'll be in touch with it. And one very good thing that you can do is students can be given assignments to read different journal articles, conference papers. And as a department, we should have department journal. So department journal can be started to encourage the habit of research writing, writing among the staff as well as the students. And you can promote the habit of promote the activity of student journals and journal clubs to write research articles, read them, and get exposed to different perspectives of research articles. That can be one way you can integrate. And what else can be done? You can encourage your students to conduct research projects, write reports, create posters. You can encourage them to participate in mini conference. You can even give a smaller sort of an assignment where you can allot groups to conduct mini conference in their classroom. You can do it in you can do this even in digital platform. So your classroom is your research ground where you can do wonderful miracles. You can, and one more thing which I wish to share with the faculty members, that you can devise your own methodology, and you can prepare a teaching approach. You can test that how to teach novel using communicative approach. For example, it's a simpler example. How to teach novel using communicative approach. How to improve vocabulary using task-based approach. These things you can devise it. You can devise a model. You have your students, because you need not go for somebody else in the society. You have real-time samples with you. You can utilize them, make use of them. You can give some pre-test, post-test. You can dedicate one semester for doing one research article. At the end of the semester, have an assessment, and you can see the changes that which has been created in them, whether your hypothesis has turned true or not. No problem if it is not achieved. You can write that as an article too. It is not that you bend your hypothesis. It is whatever you get, you can write there as a research article. So it is your responsibility to make use of your classroom and to do a proper research projects. And the next thing, excuse me. The next is, which I'm going to talk about, is proper documentation. See, academic publication is the dominant way for sharing any sort of a research, any type of a research for that it matters. So before we publish our research article, we must be very sure whether we have documented it properly. Proper documentations, because proper documentations can only provide attribution or credit to original author. If you fail in it, or if you fail to achieve proper documentation, that then it will end up in plagiarism. So research record keeping is not just simply storing the data after publication. It includes a careful reading and documentation. Research without documentation is impossible. Research along with documentation can only help the knowledge community to know about what you did in it. So documentation enables others to verify, or else it provides verify the accuracy and completeness of your work. See, the reference list that you give will demonstrate the knowledge about the knowledge you have about your field, and it enables the readers to follow the continuum of research. That is, we have already seen this area, like what important contributions were made before you work on in this field, or where does your body of research contribution add to current knowledge. Those things can be identified only when you have a thorough reference list that demonstrate thorough list of reference list or the works cited. And the proper documentation can communicate transparency, trust, and academic integrity, and that will also help you to avoid plagiarism. As far as arts and science are concerned, arts we follow MLA and science we follow APA pattern. That's a different area that at least need one complete section to explain what is MLA is. And the latest edition is 9th edition in MLA and 8th edition in APA. The MLA edition is available in the form of a soft copy, but APA edition, we didn't find it in the form of a soft copy. Fine. So proper documentation helps in promotion of research activities. Now, I have told you how to properly document it. The next thing, how can I share what I have documented? So how can I share in the sense, when a research document is shared, usually it will benefit three different beneficiaries. Number one is the researcher. Researcher will get credits. Researcher will get impact factors. Researcher will get promotions and recognitions. And the next thing is the institution, which is going to get benefited out of it in the form of NAC accreditations or supervising bodies, recognition from supervising boards like UGC, etc. And the third beneficiary is the society. Whatever we do, that should be reflected in the society. Only then that's the best research. So you should have all these concerns. Okay, how can I share it? You can share it in the form of print journals. You can share it in the form of online journals. In the form of international research forums, you can present it in the international research forums. And you can present even in the webinars, conferences. And you can utilize it for classroom teaching purpose too. See, imagine you have analyzed an area of studies, and when you teach it in the classroom, you can proudly present the paper in front of your students and say that I have done so and so research in this area, and I have got these things. I have found these things, and that will encourage and motivate your students to go to involve in research activities. And then you can post or you can share your research article in scholarly collaboration network like ResearchGate, Mendeley, Figshare, academia.edu, and you have Google Scholar. And you do have for-profit social networking websites for academics like Scopus, Web of Science. And you can share your research articles for some grant applications, fellowship applications. We have specially called as ICSSR, Indian Council for Social Science Research, where you can apply for grants and fellowships. And you should have institutional repository. Institutional repository is one special thing that an institution can maintain to promote research. It is a digital library software where you can share the research, all the research activities done by your students, your faculty members of your institution. This will help. The researchers in your institutions or else the students this will motivate them. This will circulate the research article among the members in the institution, so that it will encourage the students and faculty members. Even you have several tools like DSpace, GSDL, ePrint. DSpace, as far as DSpace is concerned, it's a complicated installation. What you actually see, these are the softwares through which you can create institutional repository. DSpace, GSDL, and ePrint. These softwares are available free. That is the wonder. We aren't aware of it. These softwares are available free on the network. And as far as DSpace is concerned, it is a complicated, the installation process is complicated, but the uploading process is very easy. You can even upload 100 articles in it. And then GSDL is also a one server support that will that has an easier installation, but it is hard to upload the data. And ePrint is completely a complicated process. So these are the ways we can encourage and promote as an by sharing our articles. And I have one question for all the learned fraternities in the session. Do you have institutional ID? I'll switch the screen so that I can see your responses. Do you have institutional ID? Sorry. Yes, I get certain responses. Many have institutional IDs. Okay, no, we get no from certain people. Do you have institutional as ID as a PhD research scholar, or else as a student, or else as a staff, faculty of any institution? Do you have institutional IDs? Okay, you have got SSRN. Good. So, a few says there is no institutional ID. No. Okay. For example, you could have seen the. Excuse me. You could have seen the first slide that I have shown. I'm just sharing it once again for you. I hope my screen is visible. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. It's
Thank
visible,
you.
ma'am.
Okay. See, the institutional ID which I have right now is Niveta_ENJSF@tcarts.in. So institutional ID will come along with the name of your institution as .in or something else. Okay. Why did I ask you those questions? There's a reason behind this institutional ID. Because institutional ID is much more important if you wish to join or if you wish to share your research article in this scholarly collaborative network. So what is more important is institutions should take initiative to generate institutional IDs for all the faculty members in your institution. That's one humble request from my side. So the last part of our session, I'm going to talk about the institutional initiatives that can be made by the institution. Number one is institutional ID. Why do we need this institutional ID? Is institutional ID will help us to share our documents. You cannot share any document of yourself with your personal ID. Even I have joined this platform this morning with my personal ID just because I faced many network issues. But if I'm writing a proposal to some fellowship, I cannot use my personal ID. My personal research proposal, how great it would be, my research proposal from my personal ID will not be accepted or will not be considered itself. So it is our responsibility, it is the responsibility of the institution to create institutional ID, number one. And number two, what an institution can do is, you can give relaxation in teaching hours for the faculties involving in rigorous research. Because there is some rule, there is something called as usually teachers will go for, faculty members will take classes for 16 hours minimum 16 hours, maximum there are many hours, minimum 16 hours a week. If a person involves in research, they can be given relaxation of 4 hours, it's there, but we are not following it because there are some practical difficulties we can understand. But you as an institution, you can initiate these relaxations so that will encourage and promote, that will make the research scholars of your institution as well as the teachers, those who carry out research of your institution, to do the research with an open mind or free mind. And then the one thing you can do is you can initiate UGC funded journals in your institution, so that when you encourage the habit of journals, definitely there arise a situation where faculty members have to contribute research article. So that will promote the habit of research or research, doing a research within the faculty members. And you can encourage the faculty members, research scholars, the students, those who are doing research through promotions, awards, recognition, etc. And as I have already mentioned, you can create institutional repository, which is a digital library software with the help of a LAN network. That is, IP address will be given so that any student of your college, any faculty member of any department can look at the journal, article, research article published by any other member of that same institution. So these are all the small ways to promote research within our institution. And then you can encourage the faculty of host institution to create bio in scholarly collaborative networks. So you can encourage the learned fraternity of your institution to create bio in a scholarly collaborative network. And I have mentioned 5 such networks below, like a Google Scholar, Orchard Number, Scopus, Microsoft Academic ID, Web of Science Researcher ID. See, these 5 IDs can be created for free. That is number 1. And only these 5 IDs are approved by MHRD. You may have it in academia.edu, but that will not be considered as much as when you have it in Google Scholar. So our Government of India, MHRD or the UGC accepts if you have impact factors, when people have cited your articles and from where you get impact factors through that in Google Scholar, or else if you have a bio in something called as Orchard, if you have Orchard number, a 16-digit number, or else in Scopus, the process is different, where you have to submit your article. The committee should accept your article, and then once it is published, they will give you a Scopus indexed ID. It is for science, and there are a few for arts too in it. And then Microsoft Academic ID is also one similar thing, but recently Microsoft has announced that it is under review, that they are going to cancel this project, and we are not sure of it. And the Web of Science Researcher ID, it is for arts, and arts people can publish your articles there in Web of Science ID. So these are the initiatives that are taken, that can be taken by the institutions, so that the research activity in the institution, which in turn in every department of the institution, get boosted, and this can promote the attitude of research in every young minds in our classroom. So with this note, I thank for the patience that you had, and I'm sorry for the network glitches that which happened initially, and for the delay of start from my side. And thank you for patience in listening. Thank you one and all present here. Thank you.